Now I can get into this crown jewel situation, which I know a lot of you have been asking me different questions about crown jewel, or as I call it, WWE Sweet Saudi Money 2, Electric Boogaloo. There were some big developments this week in terms of the card, among other things. But we'll start with the card itself. We'll start with the show itself. The show has been downgraded from the larger King Fahd International Stadium that fits about 68,000 people to the smaller King Saud University Stadium, which fits about 25,000 people. And that was a move that was made by the Saudis. Tickets apparently haven't even gone on sale yet. They just made the choice, for whatever reason, that this had to be moved to a much smaller venue. The Crown Prince over there loves nostalgia so much, maybe he called in a bomb threat to try to recreate WrestleMania 7, and he thinks that Sergeant Slaughter is appearing on the show. I don't know. But for the first time in 8.5 years, Shawn Michaels will come out of retirement to wrestle a match. Even though, for all intents and purposes, he kind of already did wrestle a match at Super Showdown. I mean, he was bumping around more than Triple H and The Undertaker were. But for the first time in 8.5 years, Shawn Michaels finally coming out of retirement. One of the few people to actually live up to his word and stay retired. All undone now. All undone. Now, if he's back for more than just a tag team match, fine. There are some potential, dream matchups that Shawn Michaels could have, and I'm sure that even at 53 or whatever he is, he can probably still go out there and have one of the best, if not the best match on the card. So if he's coming back to have a few matches here and there, hey, that could turn out to be a lot of fun. If he's coming back just for a tag team match, then this is a colossal waste of time and a colossal waste of a perfectly good retirement. So I actually hope he is in for multiple matches and some singles matches, or else this is all just a waste. Now, they're also hosting on this show the first ever WWE World Cup tournament. AJ Styles is going to be defending the WWE Championship against Daniel Bryan. Roman Reigns is defending the Universal Championship against Brock Lesnar and Braun Strowman. So they have loaded this show up with some big matches. Reason being, they were paid a fuck ton of money by the Saudi government for these shows. Could be as much as $250 million over the next 10 years. So they have loaded this card up. And it's a shame because they really need to cancel this show. So it's a shame that they've loaded it up so heavily. They've loaded up a show that really should not be happening. And before they did their first show there, the Greatest Royal Rumble, I said at the time, that WWE is a business. And it would be very hard for them to turn down the amount of money that they are reportedly being paid for these shows. Tough thing to do. Now, I didn't know they were coming back for another show so quickly. I thought it was going to be a once-a-year thing, and then all of a sudden this show came from out of nowhere. But they are a business, right? And you got every American company, sports leagues, desperately trying to break into China. And China has its own issues with human rights violations. I just got done the other day actually reading this story about these re-education camps that they have in China, which sound terrifying. You should look them up. It's horrifying to read about this. But this is the way of the world, right? This is where the money is. And so all these businesses, American businesses, other international businesses, they're trying to break into new markets. And China is one, and Saudi Arabia is another. And the Saudis are the ones being proactive about this. They're the ones that have created this initiative. They're trying to go out and just bring these, Western businesses in, and they're trying to remake their own image. With China, I get the sense that everybody is sort of trying to break in there, and China they get to pick and choose, right, who they do business with. So I would like to think that if it were me, I wouldn't be doing business with these people. It would be tough, I will say. It would be tough, but I would like to think that I would not be doing business with these people. That this is not a road that I would like to go down if I had my own company. But money talks. Well, things have changed a bit now. after this story, which I assume you've all heard about by now, and if you haven't, then you really need to read a newspaper. Or go watch the BBC. And just stay the hell away from all this cable news garbage that we have here in this country. Which is what it is. It's all freaking garbage. But a Washington Post reporter of Saudi descent, this guy Jamal Khashoggi, who fled Saudi Arabia last year to come here to the U.S. out of fear for his safety. He has been living for a while now in Virginia. And he had spoken critically, very critically of the government over there for years. He was a progressive voice. He was caught on camera entering the Saudi consulate in Istanbul, Turkey, to pick up some marriage documents that he was told he needed. He left his fiancée in the car outside, and he never reemerged from the consulate. They show him walking in. He never came out. Now, Turkish officials, and Turkey is no fan of Saudi Arabia. Let's just mention that here. These two countries do not like each other. There is an issue there. But Turkish officials claim that he was murdered on orders from the highest levels of the Saudi government, allegedly, and none of this is confirmed yet. His death itself is not confirmed yet. There's been no body. There's been no confirmation that he is in fact dead. He is missing. He has been missing, I believe, since October 2nd, I believe this happened. It's been a few weeks he's been missing. But it is believed, the prevailing theory, is that the Saudis sent a team of up to 15 men, as many as 15 men, to Turkey, to the consulate, and that what happened is they may have tried initially to interrogate Khashoggi and kidnap him, and they were going to bring him back to Saudi Arabia. And then God knows what they would have done to him there. But something went wrong, and he ended up dead. Other stories say that he was killed after he entered the consulate, and Saudi agents dismembered his body with a bone saw, which would explain why nobody saw him come out. Now, since then, it's been revealed that Turkish authorities, they haven't released any of this yet, but everything leaks. So if they have something, I would suspect that at some point soon we're going to probably hear it or see it. But they claim to have audio and or video evidence confirming that he was in fact murdered. Apparently there's audio. He may himself, the reporter, may himself had suspected that something might happen. And he set his Apple Watch when he walked in to record. And the audio may be from his own watch. He may have recorded audio of his own death. Now, it is a horrible story. It is a horrible story, and it's a story really that is much bigger than WWE, right? It is much bigger than a stupid wrestling show. It's like when Ted Turner, came out with the news a few weeks ago that he had, Lewy body dementia. There were a couple of people who said, well, this is bigger than a wrestling story, you idiots. He's a huge figure in the media world. No shit, Sherlock. You don't think I fucking know that? I talk about these things in the context of a wrestling show. This is a wrestling podcast by and large. So obviously when I talk about stuff like this, I'm talking about it in a wrestling context. Go back under the rock you crawled out from. So in terms of a wrestling context, that is how I am coming at this here. Let me just make that clear. But this is a much bigger story than just WWE. But now you have multiple senators, Republican and Democrat, have come out publicly saying that WWE should, at the very least, if not cancel the show, they should pause their relationship until things are clarified. They should pause the relationship with Saudi Arabia. This is a very bad look for WWE right now. They got a lot of flack back in April for that first show not flying any of the women over there, nor are they doing so this time. Hence why we are getting an all-women's pay-per-view 5 days before this show. We're seeing other American companies now pulling out of Saudi Arabia. Richard Branson, announced he's got more money than God, this guy. He came out and said that he was halting this billion-dollar investment project in Saudi Arabia until, this story was sorted out. So there was already heat on WWE for the first show, but now the heat is growing into an inferno. And WWE issued a very brief statement saying only, "We are currently monitoring the situation." That was the quote. What they're monitoring, of course, is the backlash that they're getting. And the potential backlash that may yet come unless they cancel this show. And I think that is exactly what they need to do. WWE needs to cancel Crown Jewel. Now, will they do that? You know, people seem to be dismissing it. I got a lot of comments even on my timeline and people just saying, oh, of course they're not going to. There's too much money at stake. Ha ha ha, they'll never do that. And to that I would say you would be surprised that with enough pressure, public pressure, pressure from the right people, you would be surprised how quickly you can get somebody to change their mind. You know, on a very small scale, we see what happened with the Fabulous Moolah Battle Royal. They came out, they publicly announced the Fabulous Moolah Battle Royal, and boy, did that not go over well. And people figured out, hey, we ought to go to the sponsor. Let's go to the WrestleMania sponsor. Let's go to Mars, right? Since they own Snickers and all that. Let's go to them and complain. And what happened? WWE changed the name. It was no longer the Moolah Battle Royal. Boy, did they change their tune on that quickly. Now, that's a smaller example, but it just goes to show you that with enough pressure on the right people or sponsors or what have you, I don't care how much money is at stake. When it comes down to public image, this is a company that, believe me, you see it every week on television. This is a company that cares deeply about their public image. Maybe more than money, maybe more than anything else. They care about their image more than just about anything. Now, I think their goal right now, my guess is they want to try to get to November 2nd and just get through this. If it comes out that they did have, if like confirmation comes out that they did have this man killed or a body turns up, I mean, if the guy was dismembered with a bone saw, then there would be no body. But if that happens in the next 2 weeks, it's going to make WWE look absolutely horrendous if they don't pull out of this show. And frankly, even if that doesn't happen, even if nothing new comes out, there's no body, there's no other evidence. The Saudis certainly have not come up with any kind of plausible explanation for any of this. They just deny everything. But even if nothing else comes out between now and then, look, people aren't stupid. You could put two and two together here in this story. Circumstantial, yes, but you can put two and two together, even in the absence of hard evidence. Just from a public relations point of view, it's too late. It's already too late. They have to pull out. You know, for an owner in Vince McMahon who puffs his chest out in support of the troops and says that in the XFL, I'm going to make sure that all of our players stand for the national anthem, though the big patriot that he is. If he just puts his head down and acts like it's business as usual, then this company deserves all of the scorn and all of the backlash that they have coming to them. And if they do move forward with this show, and this is something that was disgusting the first time they did it, but if they do this show and they air that propaganda video putting over how progressive the Saudi regime is, how progressive the royal family is, and this young prince MBS or whatever the hell he calls himself, then WWE should win for most disgusting promotional tactic in the Observer Awards every year forevermore. I don't even know if Meltzer still does that award in his awards issue anymore. If not, he should bring it back. And he should give it to WWE for the rest of time. There is nothing progressive about plotting to murder one of your citizens and cut them up with a bone saw. Oh, but they let women drive now. Look at how progressive they are. I'm sure they aired that video back in April because it's part of the deal that they have with them. That's why I'm very curious to see how this is going to work out. Not just whether they cancel the show, but let's say they move ahead with Crown Jewel. They're bound and determined, or they maybe legally they feel like we have to do this show, and then maybe we'll talk about pulling out of the agreement, but we got to do Crown Jewel. We have no choice. Of course, you always have a choice. But even if they do the show, it's possible that it's part of the agreement that they have to air that propaganda video, because that's the only reason this thing came about in the first place. This is part of a campaign by the Saudi government to remake their image on the world stage. Now, it probably just blew up in smoke with this story. I don't see how they can do that now. I think we're way past that point. But imagine after all this, not only if they do the show, but they have the gall to air another one of those videos. It is part of their propaganda campaign. And if WWE has the fucking audacity to agree to air another one of those videos on this show, they deserve to be mocked and ridiculed for the rest of their existence. Now I also see that Saudi Arabia is high on the list of places that WWE wants to build a new performance center. Ladies need not apply, I'm sure. You know, I have a few people, I want to say maybe 3 or 4 that I know of. I mean, there could be more, but handful of people that I know of who listen to my show, have been fans of the podcast for years, who live in Saudi Arabia. They'll send in mailbag questions from time to time. And they're some of the nicest people. I've interacted with them. I've gotten along with them. They've sent in audio questions to the show. It's really cool to hear from people, you know, so far away in that part of the world, who are part of this, you know, little wrestling bubble here. So I take pains not to paint everybody with a broad brush, right? And make it clear that what we're talking about here is the government, right? The royal family. That's what we're talking about here. It's the ruling class. If you choose to do business with people like that, there is a cost that comes along with that. WWE decided that it was a risk worth taking. The money was just too great. Well, now you got to deal with the consequences of that. And given everything that happened this week, it could not have come. This story could not have come at a worse time for them when they're in the middle of promoting this Saudi Arabia show. And you know what also sucks? You've got this Evolution pay-per-view 5 days, I think. There's 5 days before the Saudi Arabia show. All of the promotion, it feels like, hasn't been for Evolution. It's for the Saudi Arabia show. So if you want to get a real sense, because of course that's where the money is, right? If you want to get a real sense of how WWE feels about Evolution as compared to Saudi Arabia, why they're doing this Evolution show, and why they're doing it when they're doing it, you need not look any further than that. Look at all of the promotion and all these big matches and DX and the Brothers of Destruction. It's all about Saudi Arabia. Evolution is almost like an afterthought. And the shameful thing is now, for these next few weeks, I don't see the story just going away so quickly. All of the focus and attention now, when it should be on this, oh my God, it's amazing, first ever women's pay-per-view, right? They should be hyping this up to no end. All anybody is going to be talking about now is the stupid Saudi Arabia show. And not only that, but that should they cancel it, should they not cancel it? That shouldn't be the discussion going into a show. It should be a discussion about, wow, we're going to get Daniel Bryan against AJ Styles. We're going to get, Brock Lesnar is back and is going to be a big triple threat. And, DX is back for the umpteenth time here. And right, that should be what people are talking about. And all of that, and Evolution, all of it, it's all overshadowed now by this story. It's almost like an afterthought. So you have the horrible timing for WWE where this international incident happens, which is what it is, and it just puts the pressure squarely on their shoulders now. They've done a good job, WWE has, over the years, of rebranding themselves as this mainstream company that everybody from car companies to cancer charities want to do business with. They've wiped away the stain, largely, that was left on them and wrestling in general after the Benoit tragedy. That was a dark time. I mean, that whole story was dark. But coming off of that, it took a long time for the wrestling business to really, I feel like, recover, just image-wise, if nothing else, from that whole story, that horrible, awful story. And they have rebounded from that. Oh, they're a PG company now. Look at all the philanthropy they do, right? They've carefully crafted this image for themselves, and now it's going to be very telling what they choose to do. I don't see this deal lasting the full 10 years anyway. I said this to Webmaster Mike. We were talking last night at the Impact Hall of Fame. This is a 10-year deal. There's no way this thing is lasting 10 years. This thing was never going to last 10 years. 10 years is a long time. A lot can happen in 10 years. Look at what's already happened, and we're not even a year into this deal. Got Bret Hart signed a 20-year deal with WWE, and look what happened there. So believe me, a lot can happen in that time. The question is it worth it? They're going to have to ask themselves that question. Is it worth it? Is it just about, well, the stockholders are going to want us to keep the deal, or we can't give up all this money, and that's the most important thing, and that's all that matters? They're going to have to make that decision. Is it worth all of the bad press? Is it worth selling your soul if the Crown Prince says you must air this video during your show, touting how progressive we are, And I want Yokozuna and the Ultimate Warrior and Diesel on these shows. I mean, they're like the puppet masters pulling the strings. Vince is like a marionette puppet. It's pathetic. You know, we all make choices in life. Keeping the women at home was a choice they made. They decided that was acceptable. And they went over there. Acting as a ceremonial spokesperson, a government spokesperson, by pushing their political agenda. That, to me, though, is a bridge too far. It's one thing to do the show, but to go out of your way as part of this agreement to air video or talk on commentary, like it's just a bridge too far. Because when you air that sort of thing, you're endorsing it. That's what you're doing. WWE, they don't get to pull the old, retweets do not equal endorsements tag that you see. Like, a lot of journalists have that in their Twitter bios because they almost have to make it clear that if I retweet something, that doesn't mean I'm endorsing it. They don't get to pull that card here in a matter of speaking. That's kind of what I think they're hoping to do. They don't get to do that. WWE does not get away with doing that. They might like everybody to think that, but that's not how this works. It's time for them to pull the plug on this show. You know, months ago, they could hide behind the idea of, look, they're changing. They're becoming more progressive. We believe them. And we would like to do business with them. Now, can't hide behind that anymore. And you say, well, what are they going to do? They have such big matches. Shawn Michaels already came out and announced that he was coming back. You can't just cancel the show and cancel his comeback. It's very simple. You've got another pay-per-view coming up a few weeks later. It's a little event called Survivor Series. Now, I'm sure they already have in their plans. They have plans for certain matches at Survivor Series. Well, you know what? The top matches that you were planning for at Crown Jewel, AJ and Bryan for the championship, the triple threat. I don't know what, you might have to rework your deal with Brock Lesnar, but the triple threat and DX against the Brothers of Destruction. There's no reason you can't take those three matches and shift them over to the Survivor Series card a couple weeks later. No reason at all why you can't do that. That would be very easy to do. And then you'd have to rework other aspects of the card. So you wouldn't be able to do the World Cup. Oh my God, what a huge loss. Because there were already rumors of a Team Angle against Team Corbin match. Kurt Angle already being one of the people who's qualified for this World Cup tournament. And so, you might have to rework a few things there. It doesn't seem like it would be overly difficult. Just because Shawn Michaels doesn't come back in Saudi Arabia doesn't mean he can't come back 2 weeks later in some other city. Frankly, if he's coming back, he should be coming back here anyway. So that, to me, that's a non-starter. That's an easy enough thing to do. I want to talk about the talent here for a second. That's what I want to talk about, because there was a report that came out a couple days ago. I think it was Brian Alvarez on Wrestling Observer Live. He was credited with this report, and he claimed that the wrestlers that were scheduled to fly to Saudi Arabia, many of them do not want to go. They do not want to go. They could tell that the people who are scheduled to go to Saudi Arabia, of that contingent, maybe not all of them, but a good portion of them, a majority of them, secretly do not want to go to Saudi Arabia. But they have shareholders to answer to, and these are big money deals, and so that's where things stand right now. Well, if that is true, and I don't doubt that it would be, it's not that hard to believe that there are certain wrestlers on that roster who really don't have any interest in going to Saudi Arabia. But they put their head down and they go anyway, like good little soldiers. So I don't doubt that there's probably a lot of truth to that. And you know what? If that is true, this would be an awfully good time for those wrestlers, for that talent to come together and go public with that sentiment. It's all about strength in numbers. Yes, it would not be very smart for Kofi Kingston on his own, or Kofi Kingston and Curtis Axel to band together and to go public and say, we don't feel comfortable going to Saudi Arabia, we're not going to go. Not that, Curtis Axel would even be on the show. That would be very dumb. There's a smart way to do things and there's a stupid way to do things. That would be very dumb. I agree. But there's strength in numbers here. Plus, the whole independent contractor issue. Don't even get me started on that. They are, after all, independent contractors, are they not? Should they not have a choice in whether or not they go over there? Don't get me started on that whole farce. But boy, WWE talent, we've seen it in just the last few months. Boy, are they quick to band together in unity and jump on people when the opportunity presents itself. That whole Dave Meltzer debacle with the comment about Peyton Royce, what a shit show that turned into. What an embarrassment that turned into. Not for Meltzer either. Although at least he admitted that, to whatever it was that he did, he felt badly that people took it the way they took it. But looking at all the WWE people ganging up on him, you talk about mob mentality. What happened there was a freaking embarrassment. But boy, it sure seemed like a coordinated effort to me. I don't know if it was officially coordinated or not. It may have just been a case where, hey, they attacked one of our own and, we're all like one big happy family. And if you attack a member of our family, we're going to attack you back. We're going to counterpunch. Maybe it was that. But boy, they all came together in a show of unity because this guy made a comment that was taken the wrong way about a female wrestler. You would think that this guy was Pol Pot. You would think that this guy was some third world dictator who had done horrible things and burned bodies or something. So when they want to come together, clearly they can. We've seen that. And I'm sure there's other examples that you can come up with as well. When they have a reason and a purpose to come together publicly about something and band together, all this talk about you'll never have a wrestlers union. Jim Ross used to make the comment, you can't get wrestlers in a room to agree on what to have for lunch. You're never going to get them in a room to agree on conditions for a union. You're never going to have a wrestling union. And he's not wrong. He is probably right. Especially now, WWE, with all the money, they're flush with cash. The talent in that company probably get paid very well. I think there's less and less of a reason in that respect for them to even want to unionize, because if they have a comfortable life and they're making good money, then why rock the boat? So if it hasn't happened by now, I agree, it is probably never going to happen. But for all that talk about stuff like that in the past, right, wrestlers coming together, and boy, they should do that. Well, here's your chance. If there are enough people who truly feel that way and do not want to go to Saudi Arabia for whatever, maybe their political beliefs, maybe they just legitimately feel unsafe, whatever it may be, this is the time for them to publicly come together and not, bash the company they work for, but put together a very organized statement. We just saw this a few months ago with some of the talent on the roster. Hulk Hogan had that big backstage meeting, and there were different reports that came out about how certain talents felt about it. Some of the African-American stars, they came out, they put their own statement out, independent of WWE. New Day made a statement. Kofi, Titus O'Neil made a statement. We can't just forgive and forget with Hulk Hogan. I mean, it was, honestly, it was a pretty monumental thing in some ways for them to do that, because it's not often that you see or hear talent from WWE speak kind of on their own, out of turn like that. It was kind of refreshing, but there were only 2 or 3 people who made comments? You don't think there were other people in that meeting who felt the same way? Who felt that they couldn't come out publicly and say something, so they didn't? But we saw some people do it. Why can't you have a decent number of guys come together and literally sign on to one statement, put their name on one unified statement and however you want to phrase it, if they feel unsafe, if they feel it's against their values and their beliefs, we don't feel comfortable, whatever it is, there's a respectful way to do something like that, but you need the numbers to do it. Because if you have 15 different people sign on to a statement saying, we don't want to go to Saudi Arabia, we're not going to Saudi Arabia, and here's why, what's WWE going to do? They're going to fire those 15 people? They're going to de-push those 15 people? The key is that you need at least one big name. I agree absolutely 100%. You need at least one big name to step up and speak out. Because if it's a bunch of mid-card guys and lower-card guys, it ain't going to mean shit. You need a Randy Orton or a John Cena or an AJ Styles or someone of that ilk to step up. At least one, to join together with all the other guys, and together, publicly, they can come out and go ahead and express yourselves. If that's what's going on here and that's how you really feel, then speak up. Don't tuck your tail between your legs. I don't expect one person to go out on a limb because, yes, it could cost them their push, it could cost them their job, they could be branded a certain way. You get 10, 12, 15 people, though, including 1 or 2 big names. Well, now you're putting the company up against the wall. They're going to have no choice at that point but to put the kibosh on the show, because what are they going to do? They're going to have to react. This is a company that only reacts when it comes to public things like this. Maybe they could do it quietly. Maybe if internally they have a meeting and there's enough people, maybe they could do something privately to convince the company to go ahead and cancel the show. But if not, then you know what? Step up to the plate for a change. Because we've seen before in the past that, you guys can do that when you want to and you're motivated enough to come out and speak out publicly against somebody or pile on somebody. Boy, how many wrestlers have we seen recently, including on their roster, Goldust and a few other people come out, Road Dogg, Goldust, whoever. Boy, they don't hesitate to make comments about the fans. And in some cases, they've come out pretty hard against the fans, too. So we've seen them do that before. They have a voice. Well, they should use that voice. Use that voice for a change. But this is a bad situation for this company to be in. It is not out of the realm of possibility this show could get canceled. I mean, if it's me, I think there's a 60-40 chance this thing gets canceled. Despite all the money that's on the line here, like I said, their image, their public image is as important to them as anything else. Because it's crafting that image that has gotten them in with new advertisers and other groups that otherwise they never would have been partnered with before. That image is so important to them. And it could all come crumbling down if they don't take action real soon. Because I don't see the story going away so fast. Maybe WWE ought to worry less about their women's evolution and start worrying more about their own evolution.